do what you want to 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 do.
Thanks for coming. That is a really hard act to follow, I got to tell you. But hey, we'll do our best. I'm delighted to welcome Paul van Dyk because I've known him for years. We go back a long way. Right back to the early days, eh? Really. We're showing our age here.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I got up at 3:30 in the morning to come here, so I'm feeling it a bit.
Okay. So social responsibility is such a massive issue. I thought it would be a good idea to start by asking Paul, I mean, what do you define as social responsibility in the broad sense, and kind of specifically, what are you doing to further those ideals or those ideas?
Well, my view on it has a lot to do with where I grew up.
Right.
So it was in East Germany, which was, anything but a democracy. It was a dictatorship, basically. So I kind of like know what it is like to live in a system like this. And throughout my travels and everything, I discovered for myself that democracy is basically the best concept for all of us to live together on the planet, but that there are still many things that aren't right.
Yeah.
And a democratic society is only as strong as people are getting involved. And that's kind of my point of social responsibility, basically being part of the society. And if you see something that's wrong in your neighborhood, go ahead and change it. Don't wait for someone else.
Was there a specific incident which kind of triggered your proactive efforts?
Well, it's like the very first time I went to India actually was like seriously a kick in my butt. You know, before I was like probably everyone else. There are those charity rallies on television before Christmas, and we were donating money like everyone else. But then there was this point where I saw a kind of poverty that really like struck me, and while I was in India, it's like I was getting in contact with the German counselor and trying to kind of find ways how to like do something there and how to help. And through that contact, I had a chance to work with an organization called Akanksha, which ever since I'm still doing. And with that experience and with that knowledge what they are doing there, I went together with the people from the German Red Cross. They have a setup called a House of the Families, and we created a new project called Rückenwind, which is in translation something like supporting tailwind, some support. And basically both Akanksha as well as Rückenwind are projects that are supporting kids that come from a not ideal background. Mm-hmm. Obviously in India it's a very different dimension than it is in Germany, but there are still issues, and through different sort of elements of courses, we support them and we give them the possibilities to kind of like basically be have the same options in the schooling system either in India or basically in Germany if it's part of Rückenwind.
It is. I mean, it's one of the truths about poverty is that it's self-perpetuating, right? Because kids born into poverty, I mean, you see it a lot in South America as well. You stop at traffic lights, a kid jumps out, starts juggling or playing a harmonium. It's clear that this kid has never been and never will go to school, right? I think education is a very valid way of improving people's chances, right?
No, that's absolutely. That was like one of the reasons why I started to support Akanksha, despite there are like many organizations in India, of course, that do many good things, but Akanksha is basically creating schools. The whole thing actually was created by two professors from the University of Mumbai, and they basically saw it the same way. It's about educating people, about giving people a chance. And what they started to do is actually first starting with 2 schools, basically in the hotspots of Mumbai, and getting little mini buses, collecting the kids from the surrounding slums, educate them, but also another issue was they were hungry. Mm-hmm. So therefore they couldn't actually really learn anything. So they started to providing food as well, and medical services and everything. And I have to say, it's like one of the most amazing moments in my life was when I visited one of those Akanksha schools. Right. And you actually see and you can actually physically help.
Yeah.
I remember there was like this group of like first graders, and they just learned the numbers 1 to 100, and they were so anxious and proud that they learned those numbers, and they were all like screaming like 1, 2, 3, And I just stood there with tears in my eyes and just like, I just couldn't believe it. It's like, it is that kind of like drives it, that kind of like, motivates you to kind of, do the next things, like do the next step, try to open the next Akanksha school as an example, or with a project in Berlin to kind of like, find more ways to support the kids that come from unfortunate backgrounds.
Sure. How many kids are currently benefiting from the scheme?
In Berlin, it's around 100.
Yeah.
And Akanksha is, I think the latest is like 23 schools in Mumbai and in Pune.
Okay, that's a lot. I mean, one question that strikes me as kind of relevant to this whole thing is, it's great that you're doing this for kids, but I mean, the fact is that they come from families who need them to be working, right? So how do you deal with the parents, the pressure they're getting from their families for them to be out there earning money?
Well, the thing is that they found a way to kind of like convince the families that it is important.
Yeah.
So not to enter the same cycle, to send the kids to school.
Yeah.
And they obviously been very convincing about it, because otherwise there wouldn't be so many kids actually joining the Akanksha schools.
Sure.
On the other hand, there are probably still a lot of kids that actually have to go and work rather than actually going to school.
Sure. How do you leverage your popularity and your power with your fans in order to further the message, and what do you do? Because it's, good intentions are a wonderful thing, but I mean, it's not hard to end up going like, I know right, and I know better than you sort of thing. It's a very delicate line to tread, I think.
Well, I think this whole like social responsibility, and especially it's like, within, let's say, the entertainment industry in general, is obviously, it's a very, very careful approach you have to take. As it just says, like, one thing is you could stand there and like be like the guy with the finger. I think it's more important to just like talk about the topics, make people aware of what's wrong, and try to help. As an example, we have seen, especially in the electronic world, where people were kind of like putting out, I donated this much money to this thing. You will not see in 15 years of me doing these things that there was ever any number released, because the thing is, this is not what it's all about. It becomes a bit stinky if it's kind of this course-related marketing nonsense that's going on a lot. It has to be about the topic, and it has to come from the heart. And when you speak to the people about the topic, you will find that. And this is when you reach out to your audience. It is not about me doing something good. It's about me telling people that I saw this and that something is wrong and that we all need to target this thing. Yeah. And, everyone to their own ability.
How is that reflected? Has being so involved in these efforts affected your approach to making music, or your approach to your career in any particular ways?
Not really. As I said, it's like, my...
Message songs are a very dangerous territory, right?
Yeah, my core belief really comes from the fact that, it is all about democracy, about sort of people having the freedom of speech, but also being involved in the society and getting things done that are wrong. And that's my approach. It has nothing to do, of what my profession might be.
Do you ever feel something that always strikes me? I mean, I haven't been to India, but I know South America quite well, and you do sometimes think that this is such a massive and ingrained problem. Will it ever get solved? I mean, which kind of puts some people off making efforts that would otherwise make a difference. I mean, what would you say to somebody who says it's just too big, I can't change this?
Well, the thing is, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And if it's in your neighborhood, it can be like small things even. It doesn't have to be a big charity project or something. If you see the same grandma struggling over the road every day, just take the time, go out and help her over the road. Just like, this is a start. And and things develop from there, from those little moments. And of course, when you start being involved in charity organizations and people sort of hear about it, then others come and say, hey, we need support too. I think what's important as well is to kind of like concentrate on things as well. I know there are like massive issues in South America, in Africa as well. It's basically that I'm just like one individual, so it's like I cannot be everywhere at the same time and not actually leaving or making an impact with anything. So it makes sense to kind of concentrate on things and work on things, and then therefore focus on what's going on.
How's about when you, I mean, for example, how many people in the audience right now have laptops on and are connected to the internet? Not that many. Normally there's quite a few. Did you know that basically the internet, at any given moment, the internet and everything about it, that's to say the routers, the servers, etc., is consuming nearly 2% of the world's total energy consumption at any given moment, which equates to 170 to 300 gigawatts. And a gigawatt is 1 billion watts. That's a lot of light bulbs. You know, I mean, so how do you deal with stuff like that? I mean, are you quite eco-conscious in the way that you tour?
Well, it's like, obviously, I'm very aware of the issues that there are. I have to say, it's like, I could do much more than I do.
Sure, yeah. I mean, are you planning to go more green when you take a show on the road? I mean, are there ways, obviously, these days especially, if you're going to be touring anywhere big, you need a very elaborate light show, etc., etc. Are there actually kind of versions of light shows which are more eco-friendly than others?
Well, it's obviously, I think for like an individual touring complex, it's not so easy to kind of sort this out. I think it is much more about basically, you know, like through supporting certain policies in your country. Again, it's being involved in a democratic system.
Sure.
That your government actually takes the right steps. We are quite leading in that term in Germany as an example, because the majority of the people in Germany are really supporting green energy, and we are willing because
have been for years. I mean, the separate bins on the station platforms, stuff like that. You're starting to see that now in France, but it's been like 10 years in Germany since that sort of thing was introduced, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, since a very long time, I think the Green Party started to really blossom in the 80s, and ever since it kind of like grew and grew and grew. You know, and this is something, we have like big programs for like renewable energies and all sorts of stuff that's just going on. And again, I think something like this needs to be solved on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
Because I cannot, you know, go to a certain venue and say, okay, how about the power supplies you have? It's like, where's it coming from? It's like,
yeah, but you could, I mean, you could insist whoever is doing your logistics that they look into the sort of green aspects of any lighting rig or whatever, right?
Well, that yes, but as well said, obviously, you know, me flying around the world, I, you know, have quite a high emission thing. What's happening is that you can buy those like green passes, and for every pass, they plant a tree. Yeah. In the rainforest. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it's like we do that for the whole crew that's traveling, and so there might be a little forest already.
Mm-hmm. Going back to your music, what are you up to at the moment?
Well, right now, basically, I'm in the finishing phase of the production side of things of the next Politics of Dancing.
Okay.
Number 3, which the concept has changed a bit. I don't know, it's like for the ones that are not familiar with it, it's like I started it and I took all the tracks and took everything apart and reassembled it in a completely different way. 10 years ago, because of, you know, the time it took to release a record, it was still possible to do so. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, you got a track like 6 months earlier and so on, and you could do your own remixes of it because of you had enough time. When the final release was, it was still a new track. So these days, obviously, everything is much quicker. So the concept changed into the point that it's basically all my own tracks featuring other people. So it's a complete collaboration album, and so it's a very intense project, but it's very exciting.
Could you tell us some of the people you worked with?
Oh, many. It's a big list.
Oh, really?
I have like 50 tracks right now, so it's like I don't even know which one exactly is like going to end up. So it's like it would be unfair to mention some.
Do you still think of yourself as fundamentally a trance-based artist, or how do you see yourself, and how has your style evolved from the early days?
Well, the thing is like I never really called myself. It
was a label that was stuck on you for sure. Yeah.
So and also I think if you listen to like the music that I like make and also the music that I play, it's not really the stereotype trance music. So there were always elements of, you know, you mentioned house music or progressive things, some, you know, some breakbeat stuff and so on. It was like always part of my music. This is sort of, you know, what I do and where I musically came from and come from. And so It's a logical progression, you know, into what I do.
Interesting you say logical progression, because LTJ Bookham has just started working again, which is interesting, you know. I'm really happy to see a bit of drum and bass back. In terms of touring, what are you up to this summer? Are you doing a lot of festivals?
Yeah, well, pretty much all the important festivals that are going on, and you know, SW4, Creamfields, and Nature One in Germany, and just like, you know, everything that's around, and of course here in Ibiza for Cream Thursday nights. So yeah, it's going to be hectic.
You are astonishingly consistent and have maintained your career with seeming ease. What is the secret of longevity? Is it that you're a known quantity, that people know what they're going to get when they go and see Paul van Dyk, or is it more kind of the opposite, that you've constantly sort of reinvented yourself and tweaked what you're doing?
I think it's more like a professional approach to what I do. You know, I see the responsibility that I have for, like, people pay to see me, so therefore they have all the rights in the world to not have just a shadow of myself on stage that stumbles around and falls off stage. It's like I'm there to give 100+%, and that's what I'm trying to do as often as I can. Of course, sometimes you're sick or you have the flu and you still kind of, you know, go out and you perform.
The show must go on.
Yeah, so, but anyway, I think this is probably, like, you know, part of it. And the other thing is I have a fantastic team that supports me, that works with me, and that kind of enables me to do all the things that I'm doing.
You talk about your team. I mean, you have a manager. Do you collaborate regularly? Do you have an engineer, a studio engineer that you work with regularly?
No, not really. So it's like, you know, the production and all the music part is directly driven by me. I have kind of like a technical assistant in the studio that sort of, you know, updates things and loads things in and sort of kind of stuff, so that I can actually start working right away.
Right.
But in terms of the sound and composing and all the stuff, it's in my hands.
What do you make of the EDM boom? Obviously, the way it's going in the US. Do you think it's kind of a bubble waiting to burst? How do you see the scene? Because obviously there's been inflation of prices, which has affected the European scene, because artists are not playing here because they can go over there and earn 5 times more money or whatever. It's a weird situation, right? And it does strike me as kind of fundamentally inflationary.
Well, I think it all comes down very seriously to the fact that there's an age limit of people actually being able to get to the clubs. So basically, it's like in America, most of the clubs are 21 plus. Yeah. So basically, you completely lose the whole demographic between like 16 and 21, and they all go to the festivals. Yeah. Yeah. And this is where they party. This is where they get, you know, as we all seen many times, wasted as well. And in a way that kind of like as well created an influx of, like, you know, like regular pop producers and musicians suddenly, you know, being electronic, and that ended up that sort of electronic sounding music is part of the top 40 in America. That again draws some kind of people to the festivals as well, that essentially have nothing really to do with what electronic music is all about. It's just what they're listening to at the moment. And so in a way, maybe it is a bubble to burst. In a way, I think that some percentage, by listening to some of that, let's say, poppy dance music, will actually find electronic music and fall in love with it and stick with the scene. But I think the majority of them probably will move on with whatever the next big pop wave is. You know, might be ballads, or maybe one of, you know, the great guitar bands coming out again and doing a great rock album, and suddenly everything's going to be kind of like rock again.
You just never know, right?
It's kind of like, you know, it's always like turning and turning, and there's always like new things and new elements happening.
Years.
And I think, you know, that bubble is pretty much kind of fueled by the regular pop movement in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
And as we all know, that moves on. Yeah. So whatever's left, as we have to see. I mean,
people move on, right? They reach early 20s perhaps, they get into a serious relationship, and the idea of clubbing becomes less attractive, and there is that generational thing as well, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's like we all have to see. I mean, you can't predict the future, what's going on, but it is it is interesting, and it definitely, as you said, it has an impact, not just in America. It was like, we're getting quite some like Twitter messages where they're saying, I would really like to see you, but I spent all my money at Ultra. So, they kind of like see, okay, it really has an impact.
Yeah.
That sort of the local club scene somewhere else is actually effective by a very expensive but good festival somewhere else.
Yeah. I think there's a kind of an underlying irony here is that a lot of especially the growth of popularity of electronic music in America was driven by basically urban artists crossing over thanks to David Guetta and that whole sort, the whole Black Eyed Peas thing, but they came from a completely different world, which American kids were locked into already, and then added the sort of electronic pulse, which I don't know about you, but it completely took me by surprise, because America struck me as one of those places where it probably was never going to happen. I mean, they gave us house music in 86, 87, and then Europe took it and ran with it. And America seemed vastly indifferent. I mean, did it surprise you, the way that things blew up?
I wasn't really like, I was not really taking care so much about it, so I wasn't like, too surprised, but it surprises me sometimes when you listen to some of those main stage acts at some of those like electronic festivals right now. You basically, there is no artist identity to be seen anymore. It's like they basically play all the same 10 records. And it's like, and if you're in front of the stage for 5 hours, you basically hear everything in a different sort of running order, but all the same thing. And what sort of actually surprised me as well, a lot of them were kind of like electronic remakes of rock songs. So why, if you have a chance as an electronic artist to play your music in front of that audience, why are you doing that? Why are you kind of like trying to, instead of doing something substantial, why are you just taking the easy way out? And this is something where, it used to be different, but that's the reality right now. And I think, coming back to, why I'm still here in terms of if I invented myself or were straightforward with my things, I think what's more important than ever now at these times, with this bubble maybe to burst or not to burst, is to be as straightforward with your music as you are, because you can only be convincing if you really believe that what you do is right.
It has to come from the heart, right?
Absolutely, and that's the only thing that should drive the whole thing.
Do you also intellectualize when you're creating music? I mean, it's all very well to be spontaneous, but you have to know your audience. Are you ever tempted to do something because you know it'll get that moment sort of thing?
Not in this, let's say, it's more in like a creative way that it happens. Yeah. I mean, I obviously know from playing what works and how certain things work. When I'm composing a track or songs, like I never really think. It's just kind of like, it just flows. Okay, so thinking goes in like writing lyrics and stuff like this, and I'm very analytical when it comes down to production, because it's really important to me that it actually sounds crisp and again intense. That's like, that it is straightforward, and this is something. It's different phases of the workflow in a way.
Sure. Were you classically trained?
No.
No.
I learned, well, a little bit. I learned to play the guitar when I was 12, but they made me playing East German child songs, and so I didn't
Folk
really
songs.
become good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when did you get your first synthesizer?
That was in 1990.
Okay. And I mean, obviously you were still living in the East at the time, right?
No, well, the wall went down 89, and
I 89. Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
And I left a little bit before, and then went back to Berlin, and this is when I kind of got into all of it.
Sure. But what is there a part of you which is enduringly from the East, from that? What remains with you from that time?
I think what remains with me is how I approach music, because listening to the West Berlin radio stations to me was the only gateway to the world. So in a way, music to me has even a momentum of ideology.
Yeah.
And that's an approach I have. And because of the fact I could never read anything about my favorite artists or even know what they would look like, I have a very pure connection to music. I don't really care about all this marketing pop star surrounding nonsense that's going on a lot of times. And to me it was like really interesting. Obviously throughout the years, it's like I've been able to kind of like meet my heroes, like Morris say, as an example from the Smiths or the guys from Depeche Mode, and you really find very quickly that these guys are very focused in their sort of like in their world, and they're very clear with their persona. They don't really care about that either.
Yeah.
They just like do the music and it really comes across, and this is maybe one of the reasons why I connected to them more than to other stuff.
I mean, Depeche Mode is, I mean, you've had a long career, but they've been going now, I think their first hit was in like 82, something like that. So that's 30 plus years. I mean, you wouldn't, because the first stuff when Vince was still with them was pretty flimsy, pretty sort of throwaway pop music. But here they are 31 years later, darker than ever, and still doing it, and still have a massive audience, right? I mean, who would have thought it? Really?
Well, I can't wait to see them live. They're touring in Europe this summer, so
I saw the last tour, it was amazing. We have a bit of time left. Does anybody have any questions for Paul? Yo, man with the mic.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
I'm a big fan of the Vonic Sessions show, and a question I do have for you is there any chance that you could particularly put up playlists for the Vonic Session podcasts that get released? Because you always have a playlist for the main show, but I always struggle to find the names of tracks and that specifically from the podcast.
Shazam is your friend, surely.
No, I can just give you a little hint. It's the first 30 minutes of the show.
It's always the first 30.
Yeah. So that's easy to find out.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yo.
Well, I wanted to congratulate you on the environment of setting, the missions when you travel. That was great to hear, and I loved the interview. Thanks for having this environmental part of the interview. I would really want to ask if you had thought of linking any support to Ibiza's environment. I'm working for an Ibiza environmental charity, and it's just leaving it open in terms of also having some local impact on the environment of the island that really needs it. Thank you.
Well, I'm absolutely up for it. Maybe, it's like I'm here with people from my team, and maybe we should have like a little talk afterwards and see what can be done. Obviously, I'm not really living on the island, but I'm, over the last 12, 13, 14 years, at least 10 times a year on the island. So I think it would be good to kind of know what you guys are doing, and maybe there's some sort of things we can do.
We've talked a lot about responsibility and social responsibility. I'd just like to touch on the question of the DJ as an idol and the audiences that you have and all the young people that look up to DJs like yourself. Do you think enough is being done by DJs to lead as examples or spread certain messages to young people that are, your fans?
Good question.
Well, in a way, I never told anyone what they should do or not do, because I think that sort of would completely miss the goal. But it's like I made very clear that when I enjoy electronic music, I'm not taking any substances as an example. I'm trying to be sort of as focused as I can on things. I don't know. It's like it's like I know I really understand. It's like that artists and therefore like DJs sort of become role model to people that look up to them. It's like for me as like as a person, as an individual, I don't really like to be that. It's like, because for me electronic music is like, yes, I'm the lucky one up there who can sort of like, let's say, dictate what we all are listening to. But at the same time, I'm just like one of all of us in the venue enjoying the music. So I don't want to be the person that people look up to, really. I've done as many mistakes as everyone else. It's like I don't want to be, the big role model. At the same time, of course, there is a certain responsibility that comes with it. As I pointed out before, it is the fact that, I'm very well aware of that, people pay to see me and that kind of stuff. So I cannot actually arrive and be completely wasted. I need to deliver a show because this is what people can expect from me. And that's, some sort of statement as well these days, if you compare sometimes.
Have you ever been approached by... Sorry, was somebody else putting their hand up there? Was I hallucinating? Yes, I was. Okay. Have you been approached by the German government or to do a sort of a TV campaign or anything like that? And if so, would you do it?
Well, we've done different things. There was like a big image film for Germany a few years ago where I made the complete music for it. It's just like there is quite a exchange, let's put it this way, and as well, especially it's like there's like one of the parties which is kind of like middle to left wing. The Social Democrats is like a party that I support and also very openly, and their agendas, they are very big on green renewable energies as an example, stuff like that. And we're doing like a lot of, or basically they do their things, and obviously it's like in my position I support them.